Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Bufnagle the podcast, where we explore entertaining and enlightening discussions of the adventure of life and all things good. From science and technology to history and philosophy to leadership and success. We hope to give you a better understanding of the world and skills for everyone to pursue their own adventure. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Bufnagle the podcast, where we talk about all things good and the pursuit of the adventure of life. I'm Zach, and we got a great show today. We're going to talk with a Navy friend of ours about pilot, flying, helicopters, and a bunch of things I don't understand. So that's why we brought him along. However, I can't do this alone, and Rafe knows a lot more about planes than I do. So Rafe, how you doing?
Hey, Zach, I am. You know what? I'm fantastic. It's been a great day. It's a great end of our week here, recording this Bufnagle podcast with you. I'm really looking forward to today's show. It's going to provide us some contact with a person we haven't talked to in a long, long time. But first of all, before we do anything, I have to thank our listeners, because for us to do this sort of thing with no listeners, well, it's just kind of silly, but it also makes it worthwhile. So without you guys, we'd be talking to the walls, and we would just want to make sure that we are providing you something of value. So if there's something you want to hear, if there's something you don't want to hear, if there is information you can help us with, we would love to hear from you. As always, you can reach us at bufnagle@bufnagle.com. We're on Twitter and Instagram. You can find our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon. Zach, like I've said before, there's like a list of podcast places, and we are pretty much everywhere that is. And if we're not there, let us know, and we'll figure out how to get on there. If you are new to our podcast, welcome. Thank you for coming. We appreciate you being here. We're going to ask you something. Give us a number of episodes. Give us 4 episodes over 4 weeks, and we'll give you a reason to come back. There's a lot of stuff we talk about, and something will resonate with you, I am sure. And remember to do this. If you tell a friend to listen and you get them to come, you will get a free episode. So that's a deal you're not going to find anywhere else, I don't think. Last but not least, Bufnagle is looking to grow our little podcasting team. We're looking for someone, Zach, I'm just going to call it a helper. Someone to make us sound good and look even better. And, we got some people working the technical stuff here, but we could always use somebody to, we need a young person, I think, that has experience doing, I don't know, making sounds on the interweb that wouldn't get your mother upset, right? That kind of thing. So there goes the soda out through Zach's nose again. All right. So if you can do something like that, send us some information about you, a sketch you drew, like a hand turkey maybe, or something that that shows your skill set and what you can do for us. So send it to us at bufnagle@bufnagle.com, and we will see how we can work together. Zach, we have a phenomenal show, and we're going to talk to somebody we haven't talked to in a long time. Who might that be?
We are going to talk to someone we have not talked to in a very long time. We're bringing on Brock Friedman, who is a Navy helicopter pilot. He grew up with us. He rescued me from many rivers and prevented me from drowning multiple times. He is one of the best three-point shooters I know. He's a graduate of the University of Notre Dame. I think it's University of Notre Dame, or is it Notre Dame University? Regardless, I don't know, because I don't know how to read. So we brought Brock on in to tell us about how to read and pilots and flying things, which I know nothing about. So Brock, how you doing?
Hey, Zach, I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on the podcast. As you said, it has been a long time. It's good to hear and see everyone's faces again. Like Zach said, grew up with the Donahues, went to school together for a little bit, played a lot of basketball together. Our dads were always coaching us, and we explored a lot of creeks, which led to the inevitable river rescue of Zach several times. But here today, hopefully to talk a little bit about naval aviation and my experiences as a helicopter pilot. So looking forward to shedding some light, sharing some stories, and having a fun time with you guys.
All right, that sounds fantastic. Rafe, I know you have plenty of questions as you are a pilot and a aviation aficionado, so I'll let you get started with quizzing Brock on some knowledge here.
Yeah, Brock, so it's great to see you again, buddy. And let me ask this question to get you started off. You are a naval aviator. You fly a helicopter. But back in the day, you didn't fly helicopters. So somewhere you went from that to being what you are now. And along the way, you were at Notre Dame. So how'd you get to being what you are? What's the path that it takes to do what you do?
So to be a military pilot specifically, you're going to have to be an officer in one of our branches. For me, I chose to go the Navy route. I got a Navy ROTC scholarship when I was in high school. So that allowed me to go to Notre Dame on scholarship, which I'm thankful for because otherwise it wouldn't have been feasible for me. But when I was at Notre Dame, I took, several classes each year. And as I went along, I got to learn about the different communities. So after my freshman year, I did a program called CorpsMid, which allows all of us midshipmen participating in the ROTC program to have a little bit of experience with each community. So
what was that called? Coachman, coat hanger?
CorpsMid, career orientation training for midshipmen. I don't know if explaining the acronym
and the made up word at the same time.
It's an acronym.
The military is made up of made up things that don't matter. But
all right, it's all good. So you did this thing, and you got to see all sorts. When you were at Notre Dame doing ROTC, you got kind of like a rotational thing where you get to see all these communities.
Yeah, so it was 1 month after my freshman year. They flew me out to San Diego, and I spent 1 week with each community. So a week with the surface community on the ships, a week with the submarine community. I spent 1 day on a submarine, spent a week with the Marines running around and working out. And then I spent a week with aviation, and that's when I kind of made my choice.
Because you're like 7 feet tall, is the reason you were only allowed 1 day on the submarine is because you kept hitting your head, or were there other reasons?
I'm not going to lie, that factored into it.
That's the thing. When David Robinson was at the Naval Academy and he was like 8 million feet tall, that was always the joke everybody made, is that how could he be in a submarine when he was that tall? So that is an issue, though, for really big guys, though, isn't it?
No, it definitely is. The thing that it will kind of depend on is what type of submarine you're on. So we generally have 2 types, fast attacks and then our missile submarines. The fast attacks are small. That is where I had to constantly be ducking, or the ducting and electrical wiring would constantly be trying to take my head off. Luckily, I spent my day on board a missile submarine, so there's a lot more room to kind of walk around. I didn't have to hunch over.
Now, these are okay. So I would love to go all the way down the submarine road, but I'm going to pull us back because we want to get to helicopters.
Yep.
So you did these little week-long things out there the summer after your freshman year, and then that was exciting, but you go back to Notre Dame for sophomore, junior, senior year. Did you get more of those trainings in the summer then as an ROTC guy?
I did. So after my sophomore year, I did a submarine cruise, actually, just to, really rule that one out. And that's when I found myself on one of those smaller fast attack subs. And that was the definitive ruling out of I will not fit nor enjoy this type of life. So I started thinking about what else I might want to do. And I was kind of between the surface and aviation route. And then after my junior year, I did another summer cruise where I went out and was attached to an aviation squadron. And that's when it really sold me. I loved the camaraderie that I found with the pilots in the squadron. And then as soon as they took me up for the flight, I was hooked and I was sold. I knew that I wanted to fly.
Well, that's so. All right. So the ROTC thing that they pay for your college, and
Correct.
and you get, but you have to take some courses for ROTC, and you do things in the summer. But then you're committed to doing that. That gives you officer status when you get out. But then you have a commitment to make. What's the commitment that you have to pay back?
So I did a 4-year scholarship, and then I was able to receive my commission the day after graduation. So I was at that point commissioned as an officer. And because I got a aviation billet, I was required to serve 8 years once I earned my wings, the golden wings that you might see in Top Gun or something. That delineates you as a naval aviator. So when I graduated, I was put into status as a student naval aviator. And I had to work my way up to earn my wings and then go on with my career in the Navy.
So you have to earn your wings. So this is flight school, right? They have to. Is this like in the movie Top Gun where you have those little model planes and you spend a lot of time with a calculator, a protractor, and a model plane?
Or is it more like Clarence in A Wonderful Life where you have to earn your wings?
That's a great question. Does a bell have to ring before you get your wings?
I'm sure there were some bells along the way, but we actually started with something more academic. So we all reported down to Pensacola, Florida for API, the Aviation Primary Indoctrination. And that's where you just take general kind of courses. And it's more or less a weed out process. So you'll do a unit on weather, a unit on engines, a unit on the theory of aviation, a unit on navigation, a unit on flight rules and regulations. So it's basically designed to make sure that you're serious about this gig, because the Navy's preparing to invest a lot of money in you. They want to make sure that you're willing to put in some effort.
So that's a weed out thing. So not everybody makes that. What's the success rate?
I think when I went through, we were sitting at about a 80 to 90% success rate. So it would weed out 10, 20% of people, and that could be a mix of physical. So obviously, we are in the military. We have to maintain some physical readiness, and some people didn't pass the initial test when they reported. And then academic. So at the end of each of those units, we would have a test, and you had to get a score of 80% or more to continue on in the syllabus.
Right. Was there any stress on that? I mean, it's certainly not going to be, you're a bright kid, so it probably wasn't a big deal, but that's got to be a little bit. You can't afford to screw that up.
Correct. So it's certainly stressful from that standpoint. I studied mechanical engineering at Notre Dame, so some of the units, as far as engines, were a little bit easier for me, but some of the stuff was new. I had taken one course in rocketry at Notre Dame, but I didn't know too much about aerodynamics as far as just basic airfoils and stuff. And there was a lot of that early on. But I got a handle on it, and it wasn't too bad. But the thing I think that weeded the most people out was swim week. So obviously, being in the Navy and being a naval aviator, we fly over water a lot. So it's required that all the pilots are capable of, egressing the aircraft, being comfortable in the water until they're able to be rescued, whatever it may be. So it's an extensive period of a week or two where you do nothing but pool work. You show up in the morning, you work the pool, and then in the afternoon you maybe have a couple academic things. But it culminates in a mile-long swim wearing a flight suit. So it is physically challenging, especially for people who aren't comfortable in the water. Luckily for me, I've always been kind of comfortable in the water. So
that's why you rescued me from the rivers.
Hey,
I was training you for this moment.
You were.
Thank God for me.
And then the thing I think that might be feared the most is we call it the helo dunker. So you go out to a pool and they have a helicopter fuselage all set up, and you go and you get strapped into it, and then it kind of drops down into the pool, and then it rotates upside down, and you have to unstrap yourself and get out via whatever window or door you have to open underwater. And
so what's the timing on? So they got to have scuba dudes hanging out there ready to hook up the air hose to you if you really need it. But did you so you did that? So was there a group of is it 50 guys in a row, or is it a group of 8 and you just take, what's that like?
They'll usually run about 6 people at a time through the dunker. So everyone else was kind of waiting on, they just had stadium seats there at the edge of the pool. So you'd watch people either get out by their own or have a diver drag them up to the surface. I thought it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. I have done some scuba diving in the past, and I thought it was a blast. A lot of people, it's their least favorite thing, but the currency is good for 4 years. So you don't have to do it too often.
So how long does it take you to get out? I mean, is this a thing where it's going to take you 45 seconds? It's got to be pretty quick. Holding your breath a long time that's a tough thing, certainly when you're under stress.
Yes, it is. Luckily, part of our survival vest is, we call it a Habdi bottle. It's like a little pony bottle. If you've ever gone scuba diving, it's probably good for a minute or two of breath. So we start off without that, and then they introduce it, or maybe you start with it. I don't remember the order at this point. But it's kind of like a crawl, walk, run type of scenario. So first you do it, without any barriers to you. But later on, you put on blackout goggles and you have no Habdi bottle. And so then you're in there upside down. You don't know which way's up. You're trying to release yourself. You're getting kicked in the face. It's a great time.
So someone's job is to kick you in the face.
It feels that way sometimes, yes.
I hear you. So this was part of this API training you did when you first got officially into the Navy.
Yep.
You're an officer. You've been commissioned. You're doing API. What's the overall length of that? I mean, you've listed all sorts of things, different courses you took in this helicopter dunking machine. How long does it take you to get out of that component so that you could really start flying a helicopter?
I think it's about 8 weeks. You got 6 weeks of academics and then about 2 weeks of the pool work from what I remember. And then that culminates in your graduation. And at that point, you kind of earn the right to wear a flight suit.
All right. So if I'm taking the course and let's say I make it to I do the academics, the 6 weeks, and then something happens to me in the water, do I get rolled back to start of the water course, or do I roll back to the start of the academic course?
Or do you get kicked out?
So they are willing. They recognize that not everyone has had the time to train in a pool or the ability to train in a pool. So they work with you. You'll roll into a later class for swim week, and then you'll meet with people basically every day until you have to repeat that evolution. So they'll try and build your confidence, build your comfort in the water so that you can give it another shot. Ultimately, though, if you are unable to complete swim week, then you will get cut.
Yeah. So if they get cut and they're already a commissioned officer and they've already ROTC'd, do they have to go? They have to go do a different component. They can't be aviator man. They got to go be desk jockey or what?
So usually they'll go up to a redesignation board. So it's some people higher up in the Navy, and they'll look at what billets they need filled, and they may offer them to these people. Other times I've seen it where they have all the billets filled and they really don't need them. And they'll say, hey, thank you for, being willing to serve your country, but we've gotten everything we need and you can get out of the military at this point.
Wow.
So we sometimes refer to that as the golden handshake, because you essentially at that point had your college all paid for, and then you get to just drop back into the civilian world and pursue a job with your degree.
And so that's an honorable discharge, and that's on you go.
Yep.
All right. So, all right. So you're now late summer after your senior year of college, and you have passed this. Do you have the wings at this point? You have
no wings. All I've done is been medically cleared and academically cleared.
And you have the flight suit.
And I have the flight suit.
All right. Good. So now you got to learn to fly fixed wing aircraft before rotary aircraft, right? Do you call it rotary or rotary wing?
Rotary wing aircraft.
Yeah. So either like a regular little airplane or a helicopter. You got to learn to fly the regular one first, right?
Yes. And actually, it may even be before API. You do a program called IFS, which is Introductory Flight School. And that's a civilian taught program. So you go to a local airfield and they teach you how to fly a Cessna. So it's short. You get maybe 10, 20 hours in the Cessna and it culminates in a solo. So that's just designed to get you, kind of that aviation bearing.
Comfortable with what you're going to be doing type thing.
Yep. Make a few radio calls, kind of understand the basic flight principles. But then your first kind of reporting for military flight, they'll send you to either up to Milton, Florida or Corpus Christi for what's called primary. And that's where you're going to fly your first military aircraft. And I flew the T6. It's the turboprop aircraft. So it's a fixed wing, but it's got a turboprop engine. So a little bit of, gas turbine, but it still has a propeller. But that thing can go pretty fast. I think its upper limit was just over 300 knots. And then, it allowed us to zoom around. So I was able to do a cross country down to Key West, Florida, all the way from being up in the Panhandle during that syllabus. And it was a fun aircraft to fly. That took about, I'd say, maybe 6 months or so. And during that time, it's competitive because this is where you're going to break out what type of aircraft you want to fly. I knew I wanted to fly helicopters, so that's what I told all my instructors. All the people who wanted to do jets would tell their instructors they want to fly jets and hope for the real high grades because that tends to be the most competitive. And then at the end of primary, you'll have your selection. So it's kind of like a little celebration we do. The skipper of your squadron will bring all the selection guys into the little room and you'll draw chips out of a hat until you find out what you get. So you can basically go jets, you can go maritime aircraft, which a lot of people aren't even aware of, but it's like converted 737s that fly around and they operate in the maritime environments. You can go helos, obviously, and then there's a couple other off ones. You could go E2, C2. I could go into all the different
R2D2?
aircraft, but long story short,
That's right.
I got helicopters, and I was very happy with my choice.
Okay, so you fly helicopters. Now, there's different kinds of helicopters in the Navy, right? I mean,
there are.
And so are you like one of these helicopters that strafes the bad guys? Are you one of the helicopters are you the helicopter that hovers over and picks up the astronauts, or what do you do?
So first I had to learn how to fly the orange and white helicopter, the training helicopter.
Yes.
Just to introduce me, how to hover, how to auto-rotate, how to do all the nuanced things that a helicopter can do that an airplane absolutely can't. So for that, I was lucky enough to just stay in Milton, Florida. Having completed primary, I moved on to advanced. So the advanced training is where the first time the student naval aviators learn how to fly a helicopter, and it also culminates in them earning their wings. So the whole goal of primary is to get through, get your selection, and then the whole goal of advanced is to earn your wings and become a full-on naval aviator.
So you go from fixed wing aircraft, which pretty much is this idea that as long as you keep air moving over the wings, you're going to generate lift, and that's great. But a helicopter is different. That thing is sitting there, you turn it on and the thing spins around, but it doesn't go up until it goes fast enough with the right tilt of the do you control all that
magic?
And and until you get enough magic dust in that little pouch that they give you, right? Is it
right?
What makes the helicopter go up?
At least 2 tablespoons of magic.
But
so the controls are a little bit different in a helicopter than a plane. You still have your pedals that you can use to kind of control yaw. But if you think about an airplane, that requires airflow over the rudder or your rear fixed surface on the tail. In a helicopter, you're either adding more torque or less torque to your tail rotor. So that's how you control yaw. And that will simply just
you do
the helicopter.
And you do that with the pedals.
Yep. So that's with the pedals.
And you add more torque by changing the velocity of that rear rotor, or by pitch, or both?
Torque will be controlled by pitch, and that's controlled by the collective. So that's essentially a stick that you can think of that you'll be pulling up with your left arm. And as you increase the collective, it's going to increase the pitch of the rotor blades, and it's going to generate more lift.
So the stick on the left changes the pitch of the rotor above my head. Right. And the yaw is controlled by your feet. Yep. Which change the pitch of the rear rotor?
They control like the amount of, yes. Yeah.
All right. So, okay. So you push right or left to make it go left or right, I guess?
Yep. And that'll just make the nose point right or left. And then as we increase collective, increases pitch. So if you think about in a closed environment, you pull up on the collective, the helicopter is just going to go straight up in the air. And it's going to keep climbing until you run out of air density or some sort of limiting factor.
Until you hit the ceiling, right?
Until you bump the ceiling.
Right.
And then if you bring it back down, it's going to decrease pitch. You'll produce less lift, and then the helicopter will come back down. So
but you don't want to just go up and down and spin around. You want to go forward. So how do you make the helicopter? Do you do a thing where you tilt a thing?
Enter the cyclic. So that's what you'll be holding with your right hand, and that's going to control the tip path plane of the rotor head. So you can think of the rotors are spinning around. They're forming kind of like a disc, right? Above the helicopter, they're pushing the air down. So as we increase the collective, that's going to increase the pitch and increase the lift. So the helicopter will start going up. Now, you can change that vector by moving your cyclic forward. So if we push the cyclic forward with our right hand, that's going to change that lift vector because now it's pushing down, but also a little bit back. And so it's going to push the helicopter forward.
So that whole disc on top tips, the whole disc tips, or the and then it just drives it forward.
Correct.
So when we say disc, we're saying the disc that is what the rotor blade spinning things are connected to.
Well, you think of it like when they spin. There's how many blades are there?
Depends on the helicopter. In advanced, I had 2 blades.
Yeah, so they are out there, Zach, and then they can do this where the blades actually change their pitch. All right, so they can either be, if they're flat like this, they're not going to pick up any air, and if they're vertical like this, they're just going to just push air around, not do anything. But if they're tilted, then they're going to generate lift, and there's a certain optimal thing that'll generate lift. But as they spin, they make a disc, they make a flat plane, and what you do by that thing on the right hand called the
cyclic.
The cyclic, if you tilt that thing forward, that disc will tilt forward, and the force vector, instead of going straight down, now points down and a little bit back, which points the helicopter forward.
All right. So when I look at my Lego helicopter, it has its blades. There's a reason the blades are at an angle.
Yes, and actually, Brock's helicopter, you can change the angle of that blade through the collective.
Okay. Yep. And then you use magic dust and it fast.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Wow.
And then you can just think about it. If you're ever driving down the road and you put your hand out, flat, it's not really doing anything, but as soon as you start increasing that angle, your hand wants to go up. Same premise with our blades there.
Yep. So something also interesting, because I took a few helicopter lessons after I finished my private pilot's license, and I found that once you get into the air, right? So not during takeoff, not in ground effect, um, rotary wing almost behaves in a control sense very close to fixed wing.
Really?
Right? Your rudder pedals feel exactly the same. Your cyclic, when you're lifting, feels like putting in power, or your collective when you lift feels like putting in power, and your cyclic feels like you're just using a regular yoke to steer. It's
Wow.
very, very similar. Once it gets in the air, everything else in ground effect, landing, takeoff is very strange.
So you're going forward, and now I can change the yaw with my feet, and I can change the direction of that. That changes the direction you end up going, because you have to add those vectors together, right? Because now instead of pointing down and back, it's pointing to the side. But do you tilt that thing a little bit as you go around corners?
Yes.
How does that
Tilting
work?
tilting is definitely has the biggest impact on your turns, because I can be flying forward and put in pedal, and I'm going to continue just flying forward, but everyone will feel a little funny. We call that crabbing. So sometimes if the winds are coming from a certain direction, you'll be flying along a line, but your orientation might be offset.
Yeah, but then do you tilt the same way? You push that stick to the left or the right?
Correct. Yep. And then that'll increase your angle of bank, and then you'll start a turn in that direction.
Wow. Well, we could talk about this all day. And so these things run on what they use, aviation fuel. Is that what they use?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So my current helicopter burns JP5, which is an aviation fuel.
That's what, like 120 octane or something like that.
Something around there.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. So you learn how to fly the helicopter. You learn how to take off. You learn how to land. Go around in circles. Pick up packages, and drop off things. So and then you have to do a solo, and then you have to get tested out. What do you do in your job, though? Is there something, they don't just say fly around. You have to go do things, right? You have to take people. Yeah. So what do you do?
So once I got to the fleet, I was selected to fly the MH-60 Romeo. So I fly the Seahawk, and I fly the Romeo variant. So that one is largely tasked with anti-submarine operations. We call it ASW. So we do a lot of training towards that, but that's not our only mission. So we also do a lot of electronic warfare, where we're gathering information and dishing it back out. We will practice search and rescue. We'll practice, where we're going to go lower the guy into the water, pick up the survivors. Everyone's a hero. But we actually don't do that a lot in actuality. But we train to it. So a lot of times when I'm going out on a flight, it'll be assigned that we're going to go practice a certain type of mission. So maybe we're going to go out and we're going to practice ASW. Maybe we're going to go out and we're going to practice flying our SAR patterns. Or maybe we're going to go fly over land and practice our navigation, because we don't obviously get to fly over land when we're out deployed and on the ship.
So when when you get deployed, you're on a ship, and the helicopter is sitting there on the ship too, or you're on land, you fly out there and come back and you commute in the morning, or what does that look like?
Yeah, so when you're deployed, you get attached to the ship. So if you're deployed on a carrier, your entire squadron will go out, they'll fly all their helicopters and equipment on board the carrier, and you'll ride it out to sea. You'll be gone for 10 months, 12 months, however long the carriers are gone. For my squadron, we're a little bit different. We're called expeditionary, as opposed to being carrier-based. So we do smaller detachments on smaller ships. So we will deploy on cruisers or destroyers, and we'll usually only bring 2 helicopters and a smaller contingent of people.
So you talked about your group of people, your squadron. So
Yep.
how many people are in you said that varies according to what ship you're on, right? So, yep. But do you have you have a pilot, co-pilot, a pilot, a navigator, a pilot, engineer?
Yeah, so anytime we're flying, we always have 2 pilots. So
Yep.
2 winged aviators will be sitting up front, and then we have an enlisted crew member who's going to be our sensor operator sitting in the back. And particularly in the helicopter I'm flying now, they have a ton of sensors on board, because for our ability to prosecute submarines, we have this cool thing called the transducer assembly, which lowers down.
Wait. You're calling it, you're saying you're going to prosecute submarines? Is that what this is called?
Yeah, so that's how we refer to it, is if we were going to go effect ASW type situation, we would go prosecute the submarine. So one of the tools we have is we call it the dipper as well. We lower down a transducer assembly, which looks like a cylinder, lower it down on a wire into the water, and then when we send energy to it, it sends out a sonar ping, and then it'll gather the returns, and we can actually detect submarines that way. And so that's one of the ways that we can go out and chase submarines.
So when you're hovering, do you hover over that thing where you put the transducer in the water?
We'll come into a 70-foot hover, we'll lower it down, and then we'll start pinging away.
A 70-foot hover, all right? And this,
Yep.
How big is this thing? Is it like as big as a man, or is it as big as like a crock pot, or like the size of a bus?
Oh man, we're just avoiding the metric system at all costs here. Yeah, we'll say about 6 Instapots stacked on top of each other.
Those aren't metric units. I thought crockpot was a metric unit. Okay. So you go do those things. So this thing goes in the water, and you send out the ping sound, and that shows you where the submarines are. And then you just say, hey, I'm going to chase them, or?
Yeah, there's a little bit more to it than that, but that's what our guy in the back is doing. He'll interpret those signals on his screen in the back because we're busy up front flying the helicopter. And then we can also go after the subs by spitting out buoys. We have a sonobuoy launcher that'll shoot out buoys, so we can use those to track the submarine as well, because anything in the water is going to put out an oral signature, right? So we can pick up the frequencies that it's putting out, and we can build a track on them. Ultimately, we're always setting ourselves up for a firing solution because our helicopter can carry torpedoes.
So you carry torpedoes. So how many are on your helicopter?
The maximum we could carry would be 2. We will eventually run into a weight situation because torpedoes are obviously heavy and the helicopter can only support so much weight. So you have to always be mindful of your loadout. So
how big is this MH-60 Romeo helicopter thing that you fly?
It's pretty big. When we're all unfolded, said and done, it's about 64 feet long, and then our rotor diameter is about 53 feet.
So that's a big airship.
It is.
And its weight is approximately...
without any fuel in it, maybe around 17,000 pounds or so. Fully fueled up, we're just over 20,000 pounds.
20,000 pounds, and you're flying that sucker at what kind of velocity?
Well, we like to cruise around at 120 knots or so when we're trying to get somewhere.
Sounds like a Friday night for us, doesn't it, Zach?
Yeah.
Just cruising around at 120 knots.
Wow, that's okay. So all right. So you chase these subs and stuff, and then but you may go out there and you do the chasing and they get away or whatever, and then or maybe you don't find any, and you're like, it's time for dinner, let's go home. So you go back to the ship, right?
Right.
And you land this thing on that's bouncing around in the waves, and you have to set it down on there. And
we do. We'll typically refer to that as, just a deck landing because we're going back landing on the flight deck of the ship.
Okay.
So it can be tricky when we're on our smaller ships, the destroyers and the cruisers, because they have a smaller flight deck. But one feature that they built into our helicopter was an ability to kind of secure us to the deck. So if you can picture this, on the deck of the ship, there's a little rectangle, and it rolls out from the hangar. They got, hangars on the ship where we can store our helicopter. So this little rectangle rolls out along a track, and then it's got these little teeth that come together in the middle, and it'll open up. So it's kind of like a bear trap. You can think of it that way.
Is it about that big? I mean,
no, it's about the size of a kitchen island.
Okay.
The metric system once again.
Yes.
So we come in and we'll lower a probe out at the bottom of our helicopter, and we have to position ourselves such that when we land on the deck of the ship, the probe goes into the trap, and then the trap
locks it down. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. And then that's
so.
Oh wait. So
this probe, is it like a rope, or is it like a?
No, it's just a metallic probe that goes out, has a flared base to allow the teeth to kind of catch it, and that helps hold us down.
And that's on a cable?
No, it's on kind of like a cylinder.
So you're pretty close to the ship at that point.
Oh yeah, we're only a few feet above the deck, so
right.
We'll hold a stable hover there while the ship's bobbing and weaving beneath us. And then the tricky part is when it's at night, you're wearing night vision goggles, and you're trying to figure out, where the true horizon is. Because if you're following the ship back and forth, you're just gonna swing all over the deck. So you got to get stable, and then your air crewman in the back will con you into position. He'll give you voice calls.
I like the concept of getting conned into a position, because that's how we got you to be on this podcast. Bro.
Yeah.
We conned you. All right, Zach, go.
Okay. You use the word true horizon. Define that.
So I guess this just gets into perception, right? So how much what you're seeing mirrors reality. So if I'm looking at the back of the ship and I'm seeing all these horizontal lines, you're probably going to perceive that as being a horizon, right? Especially if it's filling your field of vision. but the ship could be in a 5-degree roll off to the side. So if I put the helicopter to mirror that, so I'm mirroring them, all of a sudden the helicopter's no longer flat, and it's going to start sliding to the right, and ultimately it's going to slide into the water if you don't catch it in time. So you have to keep in mind the true horizon, i.e. the natural horizon in the background. That's flat. That's going to keep you stable if you keep the helicopter oriented with that. To mitigate that, the ship has a bar that does that for us. So it's a low-lit bar, and it'll kind of move with the ship. So as long as you can see that and keep that flat, then you're good.
Wow. All right. So now do you do this? Is this essentially visual flight rules at that point? Or is there like
yes, you're looking
instrument-
outside. You're flying off reference points on the ship and the calls from your crewmen in the back.
So you're going to have, if you have a like you said, a smaller ship might only have 2 helicopters on it or 1.
Yep, 2.
Right.
2
so,
usually.
so if you have 2, so they each have their own little garage area where they stop right there and they get locked into that little thing. And so, and your squadron then is what? Is 6 people then? 2 pilots in each thing, and 2 of those are the sensor guys in the back?
Yep. So for a detachment like that, it'll usually be around 6 pilots and then a few air crewmen to ride in the back, and then we'll have about 20 maintainers who are probably the most important people because they keep us flying.
So they do all the maintaining, right?
Yep,
so
all the maintenance.
And so then you lower the thing down, it gets grabbed, you lower it down to the deck, you shut down the power, you toss the keys to the valet, and you go and have dinner. Is it, or what do you have to do
we always chalk and chain the aircraft, so it's super secure to the deck, and then we'll have our maintainers come out and we'll help them fold the helicopter up. So all the rotor blades will pivot to the back so that it has a narrow profile, and then the tail will actually crack and come forward so that it's shorter because you can't fit the 64-foot aircraft in the hangar. There's just not enough room. So we fold it up all nice and compact, and then it can actually fit inside the hangar of the ship.
And so does that grabby thing drag it into the hangar then?
Yes, it does. We'll straighten it out, and then it's on a track, and it'll pull right back into the hangar.
Wow. How long's it? So, all right. And then you go have dinner. So you're living on the ship then. You have like a bunk space on the ship, and you're like, it's like being in the Navy, right?
You got your rack, and that's where you sleep.
It's like being in the Navy for the guy who's in the Navy.
Barely have enough room to roll over. It's great. It's great.
And you'll be out on that ship for how long?
So I did a deployment that was 7 months long, and then I've done a couple of month-long underways as well on a ship.
And so you were out. It was just so your 7-month deployment, was it a small squadron, like the 2 helicopters?
It was a small detachment. Yep. So we had, I think, like 27 people overall or so, and we had 2 helicopters, and we went out and sailed, off the coast of China essentially for 7 months doing our mission, and then we came back.
Wow. All right. Well, that's exciting. I want to ask you one question, and then what we're going to do is we're going to wrap up this episode, I think, and we're going to bring you back because I want to ask you some other bigger questions about the Navy and other things like that. And
Zach, if we didn't get on so many tangents, we might have been able to get this done in one episode. But because we love our tangents, we're going to bring Brock on for a little bit more.
Well, there's 2 or 3 things we absolutely love. All right, we love the tangents, we love our audience, and we love our guests, and we want to make sure they all get along and get together. But what I really need to ask you is, I'm sure that you have some sort of fancy name as you're the pilot dude, all right? They don't say, Brock, fly the helicopter over to the ship. They say it in some kind of really cool Navy way. Like you probably have some name like Flaming Burrito or something. Do you have a call sign?
I do have a call sign. As I earned the call sign when I was about 2 years into the squadron. My call sign is Cinder. And I earned that because I was out flying one night. I was on NVGs, and I was coming in to land.
NVGs?
Night vision goggles.
Okay.
So I'm looking at everything. Everything's green through my goggles, and I'm coming in to land, and my instructor had given me a simulated emergency. So it was much harder to control the aircraft because the hydraulics were compromised. So I came in to do a boost-off landing, and as I came down, there was kind of this weird shudder that no one understood. And we found ourselves sitting in a weird situation on deck, and we all kind of looked at each other and said, "Hey, why are we right wing down? Usually we're left wing down." So we sent our air crewman out to take a look, and he comes back in and he reports that, "Hey, I think we landed on a cinder block." I was like, "Okay." Maybe the wheel hit a small shoebox-sized cinder block, and it sent it skittering away, and that's the bulk of the issue. So then my instructor hopped out to take a look, and he got back in the aircraft, and he hooks back up and goes, "There's something in the aircraft right now." And turns out we had landed on a giant 1,400-pound block of cement that the Marine Ospreys used to vert rep. So big, heavy loads that they practice lifting up, and I had punched a hole in the bottom of the aircraft by landing on this big cinder block.
Nice. So you are now Cinder.
I am now Cinder.
Well, there are worse things you could be called, and that's not a bad thing. So, Zach, I would like to propose that we bring Cinder back on to discuss some other components. There's a lot of other things about naval aviation that I want to talk with him about, and we're just out of time. So, do you think we can make that work?
I think we can make that work if it works with Cinder himself.
Oh, yeah. I'd love to be back on with you guys.
All right. That sounds fantastic. So, again, thank you all for listening. Go seek the good, be the good, and spread the good. Go enjoy the adventure of life.